True. It worked this time, Andrew. He's never impressed.
Welcome to the Get Offset podcast. My name is Andrew.
And my name is Emily, and we're here today with two friends who you might remember from being on the podcast back in January. It's Dan and Michael, the producers, directors, I assume, of The Pedal movie.
Hello. Woo! Thanks for having us.
Which
Hello
is now
again.
out.
It is out.
Dan is in a haunted space.
Am I?
I don't know if anybody else is seeing what's happening to
I
his
didn't
screen.
know Chris was there on my end.
Was that on anybody else's?
What's happening? It doesn't show up for me.
Oh, it's like flashing green.
Oh, it might be the weird.
Yeah, I'm not getting that. The
It's
sunlight
like-
looks nice. It's like nice afternoon.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well,
Flares.
He's got a little, it's angelic.
A little bit of Michael
right,
Bay
it's far
action
enough
there.
north at this time of the evening. Like the sun sets over a very long period of time, from like 4 in the afternoon till like 10 p.m. So there's just all kinds of strange light refraction that happens. It's magic. It's a constant magic hour.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're pretty familiar. I mean, I don't think we're quite as far north, but yes, I feel you on the. It's very light for very long. Then there's like the disjointed children laughter.
It's very ghostly.
It's haunted. Sorry, before we were recording, we were talking about spirits, but not that kind.
Right. No, I was going to celebrate the this movie coming out and getting to interview you guys for the release by cracking open my cherry cheese Quaker devices mead that I have. I've been waiting to open it for a special moment, but I figure 9 a.m. after the day after a really hard day of moving furniture, probably not the wisest decision because I'm still a
You'll
little
get
dehydrated. From
So drunk so fast. Too early.
Like-
It's too early to be that wasted.
I actually don't know what the ABV is, but I thought it was just like 5%. That's fine.
For mead?
Yeah.
It's old school beer.
I thought mead
Pretty
was
much.
old school wine.
Oh, was it wine?
It depends. It tastes like honey, and it makes me feel nice and warm inside. So that's what matters, right?
Sure.
No, but I almost cracked it open while I was watching it, and then I decided not to, and I don't
Was it
remember
because
why.
you were so
But anyways, I'm gonna
The
phenom.
movie.
you were too engrossed in the narrative to focus on anything else, like drinking?
He told me he was feeling very emotional.
I was feeling a little emotional. I didn't like bawl my eyes out, but there might have been a couple of rollers.
A little
The
heaviness.
storytelling was phenomenal. You guys did a great job, and it hit me right in the
Nice.
feels.
Right. in the
So-
feels.
But
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear.
Who would have known that a story
wanna
about
get-
effects could make someone feel something?
Yeah,
it affected me for sure.
Oh, wait. It affected you?
Yeah,
No. Ooh, it's not going to work.
it's not stopping. Did you put a delay on that?
No.
Like a crisp digital delay slowly decaying?
That's just Zencaster. Just
There's-
not quite working.
there's some-
Well, how are you guys doing? Let's catch up a bit.
Yeah, what's new for y'all over the past couple
Well,
months?
we finished the film. I should say, Michael.
The movie is
Yeah,
finished.
that's the main thing.
Yeah, that really was. Yeah.
Nice. That's exciting. So for the listeners, the Pedal movie came out last Friday, April 30th, and it's on iTunes, Google Play, and VUDU for rent or purchase, I assume.
Yeah, that is right.
Yes. And I watched it. I was surprised to see myself in it more than once.
Yeah,
I got to introduce Prince. That was pretty
Yeah.
neat.
exactly. Well, when you give such a great interview, you get to be put everywhere possible. Your interview was
Thank
great.
you. I do
Oh,
appreciate that.
I mean,
I appreciate that. It
I'm
was
not just
fun.
saying this to flatter you, our host,
Yeah.
but like it is a thing we've noticed that when we talk to people who are podcasters, especially or YouTube, like people who talk in this sort of space, like frequently, they tend to say things pretty concisely.
Professionally.
Like, Blake's a good example too. Like, there's maybe several people who mention Prince, but a lot of the editing process of the movie is to find if seven people said the same thing, like who actually said it in the most articulate or clear kind of way. Like that was a big part of the editing process. So you being in it the amount of times you are it's totally a credit to your ability to do that.
Oh, cool. That's great to hear. Though I get that sometimes when I'm doing written interviews, because I tend to do a lot of those, and I have to break somebody's quote out. I'm like, okay, who said this in a way I don't have to like manipulate the quote at all? Like I don't want to have to put in like 5 ellipses to be like, I bought a red Dan Electro guitar. Like,
Yeah,
you'd be like,
100%.
oh yeah, I saw that red Dan Electro and it was great or something.
Yes.
Right. Like beginning of the sentence, ... which we have no idea what's in there because we don't want you to know. End of the sentence.
It's usually pretty
Yes.
meandering when I do that. Like that's always a problem. Sometimes it just takes people a while to get to a point.
Yeah, and what you just described in the editorial sense is what Dan had to do for like a decade, writing articles.
Right. ...
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's what I do now. Copywriting all day, every day.
For sure.
It's not bad. I like it. For sure. All right, so the Pedal movie came out, obviously, like, just to pull back the curtain a little bit, we did record this well before the Pedal movie came out, a couple weeks at least. But Andrew obviously watched it, I watched it. So we're gonna talk about it some.
Yeah. Should
How's that
we
sound?
should
That
we
sounds
issue
great.
kind of a general blanket spoiler warning?
Yeah.
Like, spoiler, like pedals exist. They've continued to
Oh.
exist, and there's new ones that are coming out.
Some documentaries really do require a spoiler alert, kind of like the QAnon Into the Storm. I think like you can fairly do a spoiler alert on that one. But yeah, the spoiler, I'm like, guitar pedals were invented, have been used, are seeing a resurgence.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, they're even like I've been reading through books. I've got books on my bookshelf behind me, behind the screen I just whacked. And I've read through them all, and I feel like I've got a decent understanding of the history. And like there's still like bits and pieces. I'm like, oh, I actually didn't know that. Like kind of just having that all filled out, and whether it be a couple of the anecdotal stories or just putting together pieces of like. I've read about a couple different fuzz pedals in 2 different books and didn't realize where they lined up on the timeline. I mean,
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
So-
I think that was also like a really big impetus for us doing this because it's, like you were just saying, a lot of the individual stories have existed in articles. You really kind of have to want to find those. But so us putting this into sort of one big, concise, story where it's weaving in and out and showing kind of like the larger breadth of the influence that everybody had on each other, artists, builders, artists, builders, et cetera, so on and so forth. I think like for us, I think that was like the big kind of light bulb. Let's do that. That hasn't been really done before. And it's a story that like deserves to be told in its entirety or in some entirety.
Yeah,
absolutely.
because I knowing that you all film like hundreds of hours of interviews to be able to get that down into less than 3 hours even. You did in about 2 hours and 22 minutes. That sounds like a task. It sounds like you probably had to make some choices that I don't envy.
Yeah, definitely.
So many choices.
Yeah, I mean, we may have mentioned this the last time, but I think the real kind of conceit or challenge is like finding stories both in kind of the historic chapters as well as the more contemporary ones that are like emblematic of the pattern. So like it would be a really repetitive and kind of ultimately tedious movie if it was like, here's the origin story of like every pedal company, just, because like they're all interesting, they're all great people and interesting pedals, but they all follow kind of a similar pattern. So it's sort of a matter of deciding like, okay, having a few people talk about how they got into it and how they learned how to solder and how they learned how to market the, whatever it is, that microcosm kind of speaks to the whole. And by weaving together all those kind of disparate microcosms, it kind of creates the broader narrative. And I mean, I may have, again, you know, like this is something I've said to a few people, but like, if you go in watching this movie with the eye of like, I can't believe they didn't mention blank, my blank favorite pedal or blank favorite pedal builder. Like, yeah, you're going to like, it's just not possible for every pedal to be mentioned, every pedal company. And there are obviously a lot of ones that don't get included that we would have loved to have the time and space to do. But that's, again, the sort of conceit and like structure of it is like showing some really exciting examples that still speak to kind of like the broader truth, you know, the broader history.
Yeah. And another interesting thing with the film, because it's not a voiceovered film. Dan and I didn't write the movie, right? I mean, we did after the interviews were created, which you'll see in almost any documentary, but we weren't actively writing a film. This isn't like narrated by Peter
Ken
Coyote.
Burns.
Exactly, which I love that. But we wanted this to be from the mouths of the people who were being interviewed. And so it became for us this really fun Easter egg hunt where somebody would say something, for instance, you know, George Trips, or, you know, would talk about prescription electronics, you know, and it would set us on a path of like, this must be very important. Jack Bros Art must be very important because George Trips, who we considered to be one of the very first 90s boutique builders that set off a thing, is talking about it. And so that occurs throughout all of the interviews, which kind of lead us to go to kind of amalgamate and aggregate who mentioned a couple of these same things. Okay, this must be something that we should pursue. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of is a really organic way to look at like who we do include and who we don't. And it's not a malicious thing if we didn't, absolutely not. It's more like this is kind of who all of these folks, combined with, you know, our own sort of like data on like popularity within, you know, all of that kind of stuff, you know, to tell the story, the human story of effects throughout it. So that's a little bit of like behind the curtain about, you know, sort of how we chose certain stories and brands.
Total side note. I loved watching George just drink through his bottle of whiskey throughout the movie. He's like, oh, and the bottle's a little emptier.
He's like a real connoisseur. He like brews, like does his own blends and stuff like that. That's a hot NAMM tip for you. The other funniest one is I don't know if it comes up in the.
That was his whiskey.
I don't even remember if it comes up in the movie, but is Paul Gilbert, who's when we interviewed Paul Gilbert in his studio in Portland, his adorable little cat was like jumping around behind him the whole time and like climbing on his guitars and stuff. And that same shoot, that same day, we also turned into like a Reverb feature about Paul Gilbert's guitar collection. And if you watch that video, it's like you can kind of tell like the continuity based on like where his cat is like jumping around in the screen.
I love that kind of thing. I feel like I saw a cat in that movie. I don't really remember.
Yeah, there was the Paul Gilbert cat. There's a cat spotting with at Death by Audio with Heather Bickford and Natalie Hernandez. There's a few cats. You got to look for them, but they're there.
Yeah,
I think we need to start like we should do like a giveaway. Like the first person to guess the correct amount of cats in the movie get something.
Yeah.
Cat spotting ticker.
Yes.
Maybe I'll give away a cat, one of my mini cat.
Or just one of
pedals.
your cats.
I'm just kidding. I have one.
Or the pedal movie drinking game.
No.
Oh no, too soon for me.
Oh my gosh.
About giving away cats. No, my mom took
Percy.
Took a cat with her, so yeah, I'm down to just Poppy now. I'm sad.
Percy was a cuddle bug.
He's an absolute cuddle bug. I mean, I'd say like she took him. She moved like 15 minutes away, so it's not like it's a big deal. But
yeah, man. What kind of drinking games could you play during the pedal movie that would potentially kill you? That would be a.
Yeah, the pedal movie drinking game is definitely something somebody should and probably will make and post on a message board. Let's get ahead of that. That'll be good. Drink when you hear the word fuzz. You know,
no, you would die. You would be dead. You'd be dead in the first like 30 minutes.
You'd be dead before you get to the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
100%.
And I thought the 80s almost killed me.
I mean, take a drink every time the pedals on Josh Scott's side table change. I think
You were
that could be a
watching.
good
You were
one.
watching that with an eagle eye. I was just like, oh
Every
my God,
single
I've been
shot
a
with
movie-
him, he's got like a different set of pedals,
Yeah.
like based on what
Right.
decade he's
Isn't-
talking about.
What's so funny is an
True.
interview that was a while ago in the Reverb studio in Chicago, as opposed to going to him in KC, and he brought like a suitcase of some of his like rarest pedals. And it just seemed very much like in a heist movie where somebody has this briefcase
Jeez.
what's it like chained to their wrist like handcuffs. Like it was just like
Pulp
exactly.
Fiction. Just open up. We good? we happy?
We good.
We happy.
It's a tasty.
Did he when he
Oh,
opened
that's
it up?
great.
Did it emit an orange light?
It did.
Yes, that was just the Klon.
It should have.
No wonder they're so valuable.
Number two.
Was it?
Does he have Klon number 2?
I think he sold it.
Yeah.
Well, what else could we? Now I'm trying to think. What else could we put in?
He didn't. I don't think. Did y'all get into clones in
Yeah.
the movie? Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The Klon.
I don't remember.
We did.
Sorry,
And
it was a couple
we
weeks ago.
conveniently put the Klon in a place where you think that we miss it,
Oh right.
but it's
Yeah.
because it actually came out in the 90s, but it made a lot more sense for us to put it into a section about the vintage market kind of re-explode or exploding, I guess, kind of for the first time. And so,
Right.
so we wanted to
Yeah.
make people go like, they forgot the Klon. I can't believe it. I'm going to turn this movie off. But don't worry, we do. We do talk about the Klon.
Big fake out.
Yes.
Plot twist.
Exactly.
Spoilers.
Oh, that was a good spoiler
Yes.
one, actually. Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
we can put a
We're doing a thing with our Patreon supporters, so this might be a good time to plug our Patreon. If you're subscribed to our Patreon at patreon.com/getoffset, we are doing a kind of like a book club version of this movie where I'm using the Patreon dollars that you give us to help you rent the movie. And then we're all going to talk about the movie in a little audio video chat on our super secret Discord. So check us out, patreon.com/getoffset.
That's super
yeah.
cool.
That's
Let us
fun.
know about that
Yeah.
when it happens.
Yeah. We'll see if y'all can make it. I know that the time zones are kind of wacky, but yeah, should be fun.
We don't sleep.
Anything else to plug, Andrew? I guess leave ratings, reviews on iTunes for both this
Yes.
podcast and the Pedal movie.
Yes, please.
I will definitely be leaving a 5-star rating
For the podcast or for
Yeah.
the movie?
for the movie. It's out of 10 stars, right?
I wonder if we have to do
No.
anything to get. Do any of you use Letterboxd? I wonder if we have to do anything to get it onto Letterboxd, or if it automatically pulls from IMDb or something. Because Letterboxd reviews are the best, and I think we can get some really good
Letterboxd?
quippy ones. We'll have to see.
Oh, the
I'm not
social
familiar with
film, the
Letterboxd.
social film.
So if you're into
Discovery?
movies, Letterboxd is I
Get
I
started,
swear they're
it's
not paying me. It's a
free.
really fun like social review platform where you can like leave reviews for movies and like see reviews your other friends leave.
Uh-huh.
But it's like descended to most of the reviews are just like witty one-liners. They're not actually film reviews. The most famous Letterboxd review is somebody left a review for the movie Joker that was just, this really happened to my friend Steve, or whatever. So anyway, I'm not connected to Letterboxd in any way, but if you're into films, I recommend it as a fun platform to play around on.
Nice. Wow, they have a very long FAQ. I'm not going to read that right now, but I'm sure the answers are there. I've never heard of this, but that's kind of funny.
One-liner review for the Pedal movie. It affected me.
There you go.
Well, you've already called dibs on that one.
There's a joke
I
in
know.
here somewhere.
Just
That's-
There's
really
a joke in
staking
here
my
somewhere
claim
about
there.
crybabies, but I can't articulate it quite well right now.
Oh yeah.
Wah.
Yeah.
Did y'all watch the Pedals the musical, the JHS thing?
Yes.
That seemed very timely because I think I just watched Pedals the musical and then I watched the Pedal movie. I'm like, yes, the first 30 minutes of this are familiar to me.
Sure. Well, kind of. There's no breaking into song and dance, though. I really would have liked it if, Felipe Herndon or Mike Matthews would have just started breaking into song and dance in the interviews. We didn't get that far, but
Man,
Yeah.
I think you could have gotten Philippe there.
oh, definitely.
I think you could have done it.
Oh
now
yeah.
now he's thinking, damn it! Why didn't I? Yeah,
This is my big chance.
I love
Yes.
him. I love the blues pedal that he did on April Fools with Demos in the Dark. We talked about that last like right after April Fools, but
Yeah.
watching Ryan from Demos in the Dark try to play bad.
Yes. And Felipe was in
Yeah.
our April Fool's video that we did on
Yeah.
the great Margaret Cutlass. If you don't know her, go
There
check
you
that
go.
video out.
You're like,
Maggie
what's-
Cutlass.
It is remarkable
Oh, yeah.
how
The famous
Man,
pedal
she
builder.
it's remarkable how committed to April Fools this industry is compared to most industries. I mean, I say that non-judgmentally, but it is
Yeah.
like the amount of April Fools jokes related to pedals versus other hobbies and interests that I have any sort of peripheral view of seems very high.
There aren't any sourdough starter April Fool's jokes.
Not that I saw. I was looking. People, that is serious business, Emily.
Oh, that landed like a turd. It's not funny. Don't make a fucking
Kraft-
joke about the sourdough starter. God damn it. Sorry. I love how many of those April Fool's jokes for the pedals actually existed. Like, I bought the coils from Rare Buzzer or whatever. Yeah, Rare Buzz. It just it's an anti-buffer, and it makes your cable runs sound longer. It gives you that real long cable run sound that
Yes.
has delighted and inspired guitarists for decades.
Yes. And the Chibson like wacky whammy. Did you see that? It's like
Oh,
a
yeah.
4-foot long whammy bar, which is for sale.
Yes.
You can buy them.
I can say this because I will hopefully have done it by the time the video comes out. I did buy it and I started using it in demos and just did not acknowledge that I have this weird 4-foot long whammy bar.
I think it's super cool. Like it's an aesthetic choice at this point. It's like not even funny. It's just cool. I think it's cool.
See, Andrew thinks the same, and I'm not in agreement with y'all.
No,
I'm like,
okay.
I think this is the dumbest thing, the stupidest thing.
We got into a fight. Was it last? God,
It was
couple weeks before,
April 6th or something.
something like that. And
Yeah,
I think
April
the
6th.
fight ended when Emily said that AC/DC wasn't good without the gimmick. And
No, I didn't say
think
that. I said
I
that.
think I just gave up at that point and walked away.
No, you said. Are you saying that he needed more like he needed a trick to have more stage presence? And I said yes, and then you just stopped. It's funny because like it takes someone being so wrong and so serious to
Well,
be like,
okay, I'm just trying to grossly misrepresent what you said to try and undermine your appearance right now. So
my appearance.
reinforce mine.
I think I look great. What are you fucking talking about? Sorry. I can't believe y'all didn't talk about the Crowther hot cake in your movie.
Me either. Movie over. The Crowther hot cake. We've grossly misrepresented that pedal.
Yeah.
We should.
You didn't talk enough about New Zealand or Australian builders. I can't remember which one.
No, it's New Zealand. I mean, that is actually
I can't remember
that
which
is
one it
like
is.
I have like this. I think I'm on a slight delay, guys, which is okay. But if my interjections seem off time, that is why. Anyway, I'll just talk uninterrupted forever. So I have like this list of like people like that are like, oh man, we should have, could have, like, oh, they're important. They came at this point. That like I'll like wake up and like remember, and like it's like a point of anxiety. But that is definitely one of them because I only found out very late in the process that he was how early he was in it. So like that's there is one Kiwi voice in the film though, and that is Ben from Redwitch, which comes up. So we do have at least a little bit of Southern Hemispheric, but only very little bit.
Representation.
So I'm curious then, like, let's talk honorable mentions. Who else is on that list that haunts you?
Well, I think I may have mentioned this last time.
Tom Cram, who's awesome.
Graham for sure.
Yeah.
We were planning on shooting with the Eventide crew
Yeah.
before COVID derailed that, and we kind of had to abandon that. But Eventide would have been really great because those guys have been in the business forever and have this perspective of like studio stuff that's sort of unique.
Yeah, didn't they start making like didn't they start with plugins? They didn't
they've
start
been
with
making
pedals, right?
video gear
Wrecking
since
it.
like the
Outboard.
70s and like revolutionary. I mean, the pedals is a very late thing in their evolution as a company, but that would have been a really unique perspective. I'm really bummed we didn't get to talk to them. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen,
There's quite a few people. John Cusack was another one.
yeah, that interview with another COVID victim.
Yep.
Yeah.
John Cusack.
And then, I mean, this is probably, I mean,
What? Oh, that the interview was a COVID victim.
so again,
Okay.
I think my delay may be throwing off my timing here, but the other one, and this is sort of like, I guess, just kind of like cards on the table. The thing that I think is probably the biggest omission in terms of interview subject matter, which is going to be very obvious to a lot of people who watch this, is the vibrant boutique Japanese industry. Like, we didn't talk to anybody who's making pedals in Japan because we didn't go to Japan. We weren't able to coordinate like a situation to make that happen. So that is, I would say that's the biggest sort of like, wish we could have arranged that.
At the same time,
Yeah,
though,
because it was like from you, it's like a 12-hour difference, isn't it? It's bananas. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, to be fair, we did try very hard to, it's like, you don't need to interview every single person you could talk about and mention people and stories and companies without interviewing them, right? I mean, every documentary in the history of time has done the same. You can make a movie about the Beatles without interviewing the Beatles for the film, right? So thankfully, we were able to talk about a lot of the key brands and companies that you think you'll see, or that you think you'd want to see. But yeah, it's like, it's kind of a mixture of like accessibility and just having to choose the amount of folks that kind of check various pockets, right, within the industry. So like, choosing a few folks who were able to speak about the digital landscape, whether it's Source Audio, Strymon, etc. A few folks who are really can speak to the major internet boom, your Earthquakers and your Josh Scotts and your Wamplers, and then your really small builders that are one or two people like Daredevil, like, etc. So, because we can't talk to 2,000 pedal builders and stick them into a 2.5-hour movie, and making a 14-hour 7-part series might be a little overkill. We tried really hard to basically say, like, okay, who can we find to represent various pockets of this industry, and hopefully in the B-roll and all of that, like, we get enough folks across where it still tells like the overall story. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think you guys did a phenomenal job of telling the whole story. I think anyone who says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you didn't do the yada yada," they deserve a failed sourdough starter. So
Those are the ones that I have. I have some failed ones right now. Yeah, I mean, for me, I remember on the last.
Again, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
guys. My relay here is throwing off my timing, but I was gonna say the other part of balancing that is like Michael was saying, like, there was definitely a temptation to make a Game of Tones season, like a 11-hour. We're gonna cover the full breadth of it, but like there's this balance that also is we were really deliberately trying to make something that was accessible to people who aren't already invested in this industry and this like hobby, because like there are a lot of people who are really invested in pedals like us who would love to see the insides of every maker and every pedal and get really into the wires and into the weeds of every story. But at the same time, we're trying to make a movie that is also going to be interesting to people who are like maybe guitarists or into music, classic rock, whatever it is, Prince, but they don't necessarily like care about like, the minutia so much. So it's that is a very hard, not hard, I guess, intriguing and like captivating challenge was trying to balance those two, impulses of like this is really for the heads versus like this is for everyone. It's a story. It's not a encyclopedia.
Yeah. I like that. It's a story, not an encyclopedia. I think that's going to be a mantra. I think for because there could always be more. And a lot of times I watch these documentary series, and they lose me.
Mm.
They lose me because it's just a little bit too long. Maybe trying to force an episode around a theme that didn't deserve a whole like hour, or like couldn't fill it, but they're like, oh, we have that time. I like that you all leave people wanting more, and you're doing these kind of shorts and extras. I know you did one in Women's History Month that went about as one would expect. One to go something about women in gear to go on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think I messaged Dan and was like, "Don't bother."
Yeah,
Well, the good thing, I'm happy we didn't put out the. Thankfully, maybe folks, now that the film is out, have seen the part of the film about forums, and now maybe we should have waited till after it. No, there's no way.
Yes, TGP is going to. That's going to go over really well on TGP.
Oh yeah. But no, I think that story that we just put out, the extras where the women builders was a really like important thing to put out ASAP and sort of like pull it out of the film, expand on it a little bit, because it is so much of this film was about like looking into the cultural aspects of the industry, whether they're business aspects or whether they're more like personality aspects or artists creating trends, like the culture outside of the circuits, right? And obviously, like inclusion's a huge thing that is taking the industry into different, all kinds of different levels, and kind of, there's like a sea change occurring in the last couple of years across the music industry, music instruments industry. So why wouldn't we talk about it? It's super important. So the naysayers will continue to naysay, and we don't care.
Yeah.
Nor should you.
Right.
For a couple,
Dan, I think, was going to say something, and then the delay kicked in. But I want to hear what Dan has to say.
Michael covered it pretty well, but I was going to just say thanks to Emily for that message and for going to bat, because I have this sickness where I feel like I need to like correct people on the internet. And I was thinking to myself, like, has anybody ever been convinced of anything on the internet? Like, has anybody ever read a comment or a tweet reply or whatever it is and like had their mind effectively changed? Like, I think if there's like a tweet, like a Twitter thread or a Reddit thread or wherever where somebody
not
is
major.
like, oh, you're right, I didn't look at it that way. My opinion, like that should be like in the Smithsonian or something. Like that should be like that moment. But what bothers me so much about that dialogue, and just like, we don't need to harp on this, but like, I don't know, like for what it's worth, just reading some of the comments in different venues in response to that video is not even the people who are like outwardly misogynistic and terrible and like hateful. Like that's obviously hugely problematic. But it's the people who have this sort of willful ignorance of like, why is this even a problem? I can't believe people make such a big deal out of gender, or like people who like act offended because you're raising the issue. And it's like, dude, like, well, person, but dude, like, it's like the fact that you don't think is an issue means that it's never been an issue for you, because you've never been in a position where your identity has like marginalized you and you don't have any empathy. And it's like, you're a sort of person who spends hours like commenting on YouTube demos or Reddit threads or whatever it is. And that's like an expression of culture around this hobby. This topic is also an expression of culture around this hobby. If you just want to go play pedals in a total vacuum, like cool. But like the hypocrisy of like, I don't want these topics to be raised in this hobby is like, it's just so hypocritical, and it really grinds my gear.
Yeah, I think that we spent a long time as a culture trying to pretend that these differences don't exist, and that was how I think people expected us to approach it, and how we were kind of taught to approach it, not just in terms of like gender stuff, but with race issues, like to teach, we just act like it doesn't exist, act like there's not a difference when there is, and you need to. I feel like we tried that for a while, it didn't work, so maybe now we need to try a different strategy of like making the world a more equitable place. And maybe the way you do that is to celebrate the differences, point out the differences, and teach more awareness. Because I think that when you don't talk about things like that with children or with anybody, they don't have that awareness. And you can't really fully blame them for not having that at the time. But like, you got to learn. You got like, it's like you go in to do your jury duty, and the first thing they do is they show you a video about implicit biases. And that's just obviously just one example, but that was kind of how I felt. What kind of ground my gears a little bit with those comments were the people who like made judgments about the film as a whole from watching an 8-minute clip. That's what really pissed me off, and that's what I like. Everything else I expected, but to have like a couple people go in and say, "Oh, this is just an extra," I'm like, shut up! You haven't seen the movie.
Yeah,
Calm down.
That's just classic people looking for something to.
Did appreciate you commenting on that. Yeah, if you're looking for, if you're,
Well, so
go ahead.
you guys,
Go ahead.
So many people. Michael.
I was just going to mention the quote for, I want to say it was Jamie Stillman in the movie, said it was talking about the guy who's chained to their keyboard in their basement
That's
eating dog
actually
food,
that was actually
Dweezil.
ranting about
Dweezil,
things
yeah.
on the internet. Okay, yeah. So there's
Weasel
Dweezil.
Zappa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I thought that was a really fair, kind of harsh but fair thing to pull out of the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It just is to encapsulate that.
Right. If you're talking about, 150 hours of interviews, cutting room floor type of stuff, so much time spent, it may surprise people that I would say that a very large majority of folks that we interviewed had a lot to say about internet people, good and bad. But I would say that we could have probably done, a 3-part series just on the idiosyncrasies and the rabbit hole that is like internet when it comes to the pedal landscape. And I think it's like some of the most fascinating stuff to me. It got extremely tangential, like to spend more time on it than I think we gave. We gave it as much time as we could without it suddenly going into a very different film. But that was something that like was really interesting for us, and we didn't plan on spending a lot of time on it while interviewing people, but everybody had a lot to say about forums, YouTube people, internet people. So it's obviously something that like is on people's minds, and there's kind of a community around just the sort of negative aspects of what that's created. So there
there are a lot of negative aspects about the internet. There's a lot of beautiful stuff too.
Right. I would just say if you're somebody who likes to kind of be trolly, everyone is listening. All the people that you're trying to say negative stuff against, they're all listening to you. So I guess that shouldn't make you feel very good. But it I don't know. I'm not one of those people. So
yeah, there's one that I've kind of pulled out every once in a while for trolls, and it's basically like who do you think you're talking to? Is kind of a big one, and my band has experienced that too. We blocked a person who was commenting on a picture our singer posted, and they're like, "Oh, we just like Jenna so much better when she doesn't wear a lot of makeup and when her hair isn't some bright color." And she's like, "Who do you think you're talking to? Like, well, do you like mean to be insulting me? Why don't you assume that I'm running my band's account?" It's that kind of thing, but
right. And I guess I should say too, like the as a sort of add on to they are listening. Like if you're one of those people and you're commenting, they're listening, but they're not. They don't care. You're just making them mad. They're not going to change something because you're demanding that. This is I think you know what we're talking about, but It's one of those things.
Yeah, basically, like they hear you and they don't care. You're like, it's like a mosquito in your ear, kind of, more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like I've also another response I've had is people will say, "Oh, you do this in your demo, you should do this." Instead, I'm like, "Well, maybe you should start a demo channel because you obviously have a very, very clear idea of what you want in a demo channel. Like you have a great vision, go for it, and leave me alone." That's where I live with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that takes us kind of towards the end of the movie where we start transitioning into this is what the last decade has been and how much it seems like from every decade since or really just throughout the entire movie, every decade changes so drastically. Like 10 years is just worlds apart from, and so, this movie is filmed on the back half of this decade. And now we're looking at the beginning of the decade. And you guys have spent an absurd amount of hours kind of just digging into the last 50, 60, 70 years of this history. And I'm curious, with all of that context, kind of towards the end of the movie, I forget who said it. It was someone said, is it going to be like this forever? And the obvious answer to that is no, but what's next? Yeah. I mean, given the trajectory and how much you guys have sunk your teeth into this, I imagine you have a good answer for
I
that.
hope you're prepared to be slightly disappointed. It's a really good question, and to take a slight step backwards, which you're scratching up against like something that's like endlessly fascinating to me as like a former history major and somebody who thinks about this stuff a lot, is like the further you get away from the history, like the easier it is to put like start and stops and like periodization and like it's really hard to do that when you're actually living through it. Like the power of retrospect to clarify, sometimes in good ways and sometimes in bad ways. Like there were digital pedals that existed in the 70s and lots of digital pedals that existed in the 90s. It's really easy for us to say like, okay, the 80s was like the digital, because like decades are like a convenient, bookmark. To actually answer your question though, this kind of comes up at the end of the movie. Spoilers. No, if somebody's listening to this podcast backwards, they're going to get great spoiler warnings. So I think the big theme obviously is pedals as instruments as opposed to pedals as effects, right? So like you're a pedal player, you're buying this pedal because it does something and you want to explore it the way that somebody might explore a synthesizer. And I think that kind of continuation of that impulse where like you're really defining your sound and your creative expression based on how you use a pedal or manipulate sound as a tool is sort of like what's going to keep on developing and exciting in new ways. As part of that, also, I think that the distance between like synthesizers and synth gear and pedal gear and guitar gear is going to continue to like collapse more. So that, I mean, really like how different are the circuits in like Eurorack synthesizer systems and like the circuits in a lot of like really like new, forward looking pedal boards. There are some differences in terms of like, like the levels of the audio and stuff like that, but it's really like not that much. It's like not that far of a leap. So I think that sort of continuation of pedals being this sort of form of expression or like tool of expression that takes on a life of its own and kind of collapses with like synthesizers and other types of gear is sort of where everything is. I mean, this is not a super like unique or novel perspective. Like it's pretty evident, but I just think that's like, I think that would be the chapter we would add to this if we were going to make this movie like 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with that. And that's kind of why we do put a big focus on that as like the film closes, because I think, in the 80s, pedals didn't die. People thought they were going to with synth music popping up. And we're kind of in another, I guess you could say, similar era where people, especially maybe of the older or more like classically minded mindset are like guitar is dead. It's not, but also it's just the way that they think about guitar. Maybe not as prominent as it once was. That doesn't mean that the guitar is dead or that effects are dead. In fact, I think there's a lot of evidence to show that like the market is rising and rising. Just people aren't making 3-chord rock and roll jams as much. They're doing more inventive things. Even if you think that a laptop and some sort of VST software is not interesting, somebody else does think that it is. And so people utilizing effects and taking circuits, digitizing them, taking digital stuff, analogizing it, right? There's all kinds of things that are going to make that industry continue to carry on, similarly to when we thought it wouldn't 30 years ago.
Nice. Let's see. I think I might have sent some questions if we want to talk about those. And feel free to not answer this, but I was super impressed that you all got Fran in the movie. Because on a very personal level, I reached out to her several years ago about an article I was trying to have written, and it ultimately just didn't come together. But she told me she was retired. Didn't want to talk about that shit anymore.
And she is. Yeah, I think we were also pleasantly surprised. I mean, obviously, Fran is an awesome person, and once we went to Pennsylvania and actually met with her, it proved everything that we thought that we were like, this is going to be, she's so awesome. And after meeting her, we were like, wow, she's even more awesome than we thought. But getting that interview, and I think Dan could probably speak to this a bit more, was I think hopefully what we had on our side was we're making a film about the history of effects pedals, and you're extremely important to that. So if you want to be represented, please say yes to this interview.
Yeah, I think I'd have to dig out the emails, but I think it was really the appeal of we want to kind of tell the story holistically, maybe warts and all to some extent, and this isn't I think approaching it as I mentioned this in another interview we just did, but what was really cool about the Fran interview, one of many things, is that unlike a lot of builders, Fran isn't in the industry anymore, so there's a certain distance that gives this sort of clarity and thoughtfulness. You'll notice that we pull that interview in for a lot of the historical sections as well, and that's just because Fran is so intelligent and thoughtful about it. So I think it was sort of emphasizing the historical and that perspective that luckily it worked out, because the proof's in the pudding. It's a really great part of the movie.
Yeah, I just love listening to her talk about stuff. I'm sure she could have driven her own documentary, is my guess. I bet she has some stories.
Yeah, I would really like to, and I think we probably will. We're going to be continuing to pull up some more sort of cutting room floor extras, bonus feature type of thing, as we have been with Where the Women Builders and Nels Klein's thing. We have a Mutron story. There's a bunch of stuff popping up on the Reverb YouTube channel. I think we're going to carry on doing that because so many of the stories like Fran's warrant being heard more, in the same format. We just could not fit them all into the film. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to see them at some point this summer.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. So I think that's a pretty good place to wrap, unless Andrew or y'all have other closing thoughts. Subscribe to the Reverb YouTube after you watch the movie
I'll just
get
say
more clips.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us, and thank you for your participation and support through this project.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really exciting for me. I kept looking at my husband while we were watching, and I'm like, I'm in a movie with fucking Kevin Shields.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's forever. So that's cool. Right? That's one for the
My
books.
mother's proud of me.
Definitely. That's great.
I kid. My mom's always proud of me. Neat. So does anybody else have anything else to wrap with?
I just want to say a thank you right back to you guys, because
Yes.
my goodness. I guess so at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that I got a little misty-eyed, and I think the thematic element that hit me really hard on a personal level was the entrepreneurship and the success of that, and like hearing some of those success stories and kind of ending with and you can do it too. I think it's something that I really needed to hear personally at this moment in time. And I think I'm not alone in that. And I think that's going to have a really huge positive impact in that sense. And so I wanted to say a very heartfelt thank you for making me literally last night in this chair cry solitary tears all by myself.
I mean, to me, I have to say that's so awesome, and something that I don't think any of us were. I don't think we were trying to set out to like fool people into getting emotional or like feeling for. But what we were trying to make a movie about people, and like a really cool grassroots movement that turned into like this big thing, which is really cool. And so I think what you felt is an extension of why we made the film. It's like there is such a massive community of people who really do care about the industry, and so we made it as a love letter to you and to them, but also to the future, to people who don't know the personalities behind the effects, and now hopefully they do, and they don't just think, oh, it's a DS1. They think like, oh, like somebody made this, and I know the story behind the company that did or whatever. You know what I mean? And so that's really great to hear. I'm glad you had that reaction.
Yeah. No, it was super compelling, and yeah, great job. Phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I think that is this has been a great way to spend a Sunday morning. Thanks to Dan and Michael. Everyone listening, watching, please watch the Pedal movie. It's available now. Subscribe to the Reverb YouTube for those bonus features. Their mailing list too. I'm sure that they'll send out emails when new videos drop.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Until next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for understanding. My name is Emily.
My name is Andrew.
That's Dan, and that's Michael. Goodbye.
Bye.